Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. This is the first of 3 community meetings organized by the Department of Water Resources to update you on the Lake Oroville Spillways project. So how is the sound level? Can those of you around the room, can people hear me? Yes? All right. If at some point in the evening you cannot hear, please let me know and we'll do something about it, okay? I do need to ask anyone who's having a conversation over there if you need to take it outside. I don't want to have distracting conversations. Thank you. All right, my name is Mike Hardy, and I'm a principal with Kearns & West, and I'll be facilitating tonight's meeting. Just a quick safety review: exits over there and over here. Yeah, and then there's one right down here. Restrooms, the men's room is on this side, women's room is on this side, and then there are also restrooms in the back there. All right, how many of you attended one of the first 7 community meetings? All right, there's a lot of recidivists here. Well, you know what? I really appreciate you coming tonight, and the purpose for tonight is to provide you with an update. So it's not about going over information that you have heard before. There may be some things that you've seen before, but most of the information that the department wants to present to you tonight is intended to be new information. So I do appreciate you coming tonight. Most of you also know from those first meetings that I'm not a technical expert. I could not possibly address questions about dams, spillway repairs, or other topics that are going to be covered tonight. So momentarily I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Joel Ledesma, who's the Deputy Director for the State Water Project, and he is going to provide some initial remarks on behalf of the Department of Water Resources. But first, let me just quickly review the objectives for tonight. The first is to provide an opportunity for you to learn about the progress of the Lake Oroville Spillways Emergency Recovery Project. The second is to provide you information about the response that the department and others have gotten in terms of concerns that were expressed either at the first community meetings or subsequently, and steps that the department and their partner agencies have taken to try and address those concerns. Obviously, we want to give you an opportunity to ask questions and offer your perspectives. And finally, we want to make sure that we're giving you updated information about how to communicate with the department to ask additional questions, express concerns, provide information, and so on. So those are the 4 things that we want to be sure and hit tonight. Okay. The agenda is intended to be very quick. We're going to have some introductions and acknowledge some of your elected officials who are here, and then I'll quickly go over the guidelines for participation. They'll be familiar to you from the first set of meetings. Just here are the basic topics. We're going to give you an update on reservoir operations, and then we're going to address construction progress, and then there's going to be a presentation on responding to community concerns. And then we're going to ask you to hold your questions while we cover that material, and then we'll open it up to questions and your comments. We're a pretty straightforward agenda. Some guidelines for participating. I'll go over them really quickly. You know, it's about being respectful. There are people who have some different views about a number of topics that are important for your community that relate to the Spillways project. Understood. My request to all of you, so that everyone has an opportunity who's taken the time to come tonight, is that they be allowed to offer comments or ask their questions, and we'll make sure that people do the same for you. If you please follow the process, you'll remember speaker cards. There were speaker cards on your chair. If you would like to ask a question tonight, please, or offer a comment at the microphone, please fill out a speaker card. I already have, I think I have 4 from folks. You can give them to, I've got a bunch back at the sign-in table. If you want to give them to Janet, you can fill them out during the presentation. There's no cutoff time at this point, but please fill out a speaker card, and that's the system that we're going to use. Pardon me? Yes, they're at every seat. That's right. If you don't want to ask a question tonight, but you would like to submit a comment, you can fill out one of the comment forms. They're also on your chairs. And you can take your comment form to the sign-in table where there's a clear box and you can put it in there. And I do want to say that the department has tried very hard to respond to each of the comments that were received during the first 7 public meetings. I think we've got, well, we can go over some of the statistics, but it's not, there's been a commitment to try and respond to the best of the information that's available so that they don't just disappear. And so if you would like to write a comment, I can assure you that it's going to be reviewed and we're going to do what we can to provide you with a follow-up. Okay, and then finally, there's a rule of 1 here that I'd like you to keep in mind, and that is one speaker, 1 opportunity to speak, 1 question, and then it's the rule of 1 and 3. We have a 3-minute guideline that we've asked people to honor, and it's really about giving everyone else some time. So keep 3 minutes in mind. There is a timer up here just to help you know where you are, okay? And if you could also turn off your cell phones or other devices, that'll help us with being able to focus. And that's it for the guidelines. I'll come back to them when we are ready to start answering questions. Okay. And I think, Joel, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay?
Well, good evening, everybody, and want to thank you again for coming. I know it takes part of your time out of your day, and really appreciate it. I know for us, these are very important because I was at almost all the community meetings we did last time, and just hearing from you, I mean, we understand your concerns a lot better, and it means a lot to us to make sure that we're doing everything we can to not only give you the confidence in us that we're doing the right thing, but, you know, give you information, timely information, so that as we go through the process with us, we're always in lockstep and trying to do our best. So with that though, I do want to thank the elected officials that are here. It's also very important to us to make sure that they know what we're doing. They give us input, and we're always doing what's right for the community, not just the state water project. So with that, kind of want to acknowledge the elected officials that are here and thank them for taking the time also, and that's Laura Page, representative from La Malfa's office, Congressman, and then Bo Shepherd from the city of Biggs, Mayor Dahlmeyer, Oroville Mayor, Linda Draper, Oroville City Council, Janet Goodson, Vice Mayor, City of Oroville, Marlene De La Rosario, City Council, Art Hatley, City Council, Curtis Green, as Assemblyman Gallagher's office, Jane Dolan, Central Valley Flood Protection Board, Mike Ramsey, District Attorney, Sheriff Corey Honey, Butte County Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff. And Saulo Landano, Senator Nielsen's office. Thank you all for attending tonight. So I'll be doing a little bit of the recap, so kind of just get us all grounded again, start off with the components of Oroville's reservoir, the infrastructure, go a little bit into what happened so that when we get into the construction, we're all kind of in the same place again. So here, just want us to make sure we all understand the Oroville Dam is this big area here. To the left is the flood control spillway, where we had the damage downstream of it, the emergency spillway, and then the power plant and the tunnels where the water comes out of the dam through the power plant. The Version Pool, the tail race, is what butts up against the power plant, and that's where we had the water rising because of the sediment that came down and the rock that came down from the chute and was backing the water up. Oh, thanks. So the transmission lines that came over and we're crossing over the spillway. And if you remember the towers that we were worried about, erosion coming up and impacting those towers. So from an infrastructure, this whole area is what we'll be talking about in the next slides. So what happened? Kind of a timeline of events again. February 7th, we halted the main spillway. There was a maintenance worker that was out there doing work, noticed an abnormal flow, quickly called the area control center there at Oroville Field Division, and we shut down the spillway so that we can inspect it. We brought in FERC, DSOD, the Department Safety Dam Engineers, so they could assess the damage, and to also assess, because I'm sure you all remember the weather that we were having during that time, is to assess how much time we had to be able to, do something about this damage. February 11th, the emergency spillway started to flow. We were not expecting to get to that point, to have to use it, but we had so much rain coming in, the projections kept going up. We were, at that point, we really didn't know what the performance of the spillway was, so we were being careful that we didn't use it in a way that the erosion kept going up the chute and then compromised the superstructure of the gates. On the 12th here is where us working with Sheriff Honey and providing all the information and the engineering that we had, he had to make the decision of the evacuation because of the risk that it posed to the public. He made that decision, and that was a hard decision to make. On the 12th, because we still needed to make sure that we operated and managed that reservoir down because the storms were continuing to come in, we made the decision to increase flows up to 100,000, which eventually was what brought down the lake back down. The emergency spillway stopped flowing, and we were able to manage it for the rest of the season. May 20th is when we brought the contractor officially began construction. I mean, we're in May and the damage is in February. That is pretty fast to get a contractor out to put out, some kind of bid and get a contractor in to start. So that was a lot of work by the department, and having FERC, DSOD, all the regulatory bodies help us, the emergency declaration that really allowed us to be able to quickly put a contract in place. May 24th is when was the last time when we eventually closed the gates. That also was done in coordination with FERC and DSOD. We had to come up with a plan, an operational plan for the rest of the summer that all the regulatory groups were confident, just as much as we were, that we were not going to have to use those gates anymore, knowing the snowpack that we had during the winter. So, kind of to put it in perspective, because I think, when you look back historically, even though while it was happening, we knew we were getting unprecedented rainfall and weather. But when you look back and you look every year at how much outflow we had at the spillway, and you look at 2017, you kind of then start to understand why we had a damaged spillway, but the weather was far more than we've ever had before. 5.2 million acre-feet of water went through that spillway while it was damaged. So I think when you look at it that way, you kind of you better understand and appreciate what we had in front of us. It also gives you, from a historical purpose, that the spillway gates are open 26 out of 49, so about half the years we use it. Now, it's not always a one year yes, 1 year no. It goes by the weather. We get into drought, we don't use it a few years. We get into some wet patterns for a few years. But I think it's important to note that about half the times, only 4 times before this year, did we open it before January 1st? And so all of these factors in this hydrology is what played into our November 1st date, how we came up with when's the right time, that what's the milestones we want to hit for construction. It's this type of information and looking at all the ensembles of weather patterns we've had to say, you know what, we usually don't use it until January, but there are some outliers and we need to be prepared for that. So, and there was some years where we had to use it in December. And so that's why the November 1st date came in, is we want to be as safe as we can, so that that's where we came up with the November 1st construction date, to be ready in the event it's needed. What we had to manage during those days, and Sheriff Honey was in the room with us the whole time, was the broken spillway. These were all the risks we had in front of us. The towers that we were worried that if the erosion continued to go up the chute, could potentially take down that tower and, one, impact the grid, but then second, take lines out for that power plant that we knew was needed for the summer, like right now. So we knew that. So we were being really careful with how we used the spillway so that that wouldn't happen. The flood fighting at the power plant. Because of the broken spillway and all the rock and settlement that came down in the diversion pool and plugged up the diversion pool, the water was backing up into the power plant. So engineers and maintenance workers from the plant were down in the plant making sure that, you know, anywhere that the water could come up the tunnel and up into the turbine and then out into the unit was secured so that water would not enter the plant, because water entering the plant and damaging those generators could mean up to a year, 6 months to a year of repair. And the summer was too important. We cannot let that happen. So, and then last was the unexpected erosion we had at the spillway. And so all these factors, all these risks is what we were trying to protect while we were in that room, to make sure that public safety wasn't impacted that moment in time or in the summer, and getting through that period. So these were the things we were worried about, and I think we managed successfully as a group. And it wasn't just us. I mean, it was Sheriff's Office, it was CAL FIRE, it was FERC, it was DSOD, it was DPR, it was all the organizations, California Highway Patrol. It was everybody in that as a group backing us up to make sure that we made it safely, so that public safety was number one and the dam was never at risk. So with that, I'll pass it on to Mr. Gutierrez.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, my name is Dave Gutierrez. I'm consulting with the Department of Water Resources, and I'm going to kind of go mainly through the construction, get everybody back up to speed of what's happened since May, what kind of construction progress have we made on this project. But before I get into that, let me just touch a little bit on the operation of the reservoir. And so the first key point is we have to operate the reservoir differently, and you saw that this year, you saw that this summer, than you would normally have done. And that's because of the situation of the spillway, of course. And so back in March, April, May, we were working on hydrologic analysis to use statistics to understand how precipitation is going to come down through that snow melt and affect the reservoir. We have to get the reservoir as low as we possibly can, because that's the safe situation, but on the same token, we had to get the gate closed as quickly as we can so we can start construction. So through these hydrologic analysis, we worked with FERC, DSOD, and informed the Corps of Engineers of how we're going to operate the reservoir through the summer months. And in a sense, what we had agreed to is we're going to get the reservoir down to elevation 700 by November 1st. So we know in the summer months there's not going to be much precipitation coming on. We know we can safely operate the reservoir, but we also want to get it down to an elevation of 700, which leaves us plenty of capacity for next year when those storms starts coming in. Because we're still going to try to not allow the spillway to be operated if possible. Now, that's getting us through November 1st, so then what happens? Now we got to actually operate the reservoir a little bit differently than we normally do after November 1st. So we got to get through this winter, and normally there's a Corps of Engineers rule curve that we all go through, and it's to provide flood control downstream of Oroville Dam. In this particular situation throughout this year, we're probably going to need to be a little bit more conservative than what we normally would be. And so what we're doing right now is we're doing hydrologic analysis again. We're going to work with the Corps of Engineers. We're also going to work with the two regulating agencies, FERC and DSOD, to come up with an operation plan for the winter months and to get us through into the next construction season. And then finally, after we get through next year, we all know we probably should look at the reservoir operation from a long-term perspective. Now, this is a long-term vision. This is going to take a lot of work. It's going to be the Corps of Engineers that actually usually leads this situation. But we know we have to look at the operating manual of Oroville, get it updated. It's quite old and probably outdated, and so that needs to be looked at. Now, that's a lot of work. That's a long-term vision. That's going to take some years to actually get to an end result on that particular one. So now let's jump into construction of where we are with the spillway. So first let me reorient yourself and let's talk a little bit about what the original plan was. So here is that flood control spillway again, and here's that emergency spillway, and here's the dam. The dam's over here on the right-hand side the way you're looking at the picture. And so when we were talking to you all back in March, what we all said is what we want to do is we want to set up some criteria. The most important piece of this whole project in terms of spillway is the upper part of the spillway. And so we said we want to develop a criteria to be able to pass 270,000 CFS through this part of the spillway. That's a design flow. Now that doesn't mean we're going to want to flow 270,000 CFS. That's just what we want this spillway to actually be able to capable of doing by November 1st. Then what we said is on the lower half, we want the spillway to be able to pass at least 100,000 CFS. And so the idea being there, we had all kind of plans, A's, B's, C, D, is if we were to, we're not going to try to operate the reservoir, of course, and have flows in amounts of 270,000 CFS, but if for some reason we got that, we would be able to pass 100,000 through here without significant damage, and then flow may go in other directions. That was the logic, that was the criteria. And then finally, over here in the emergency spillway, what we wanted to do is at least get that up by November 1st to at least 30,000 CFS capacity. Now, there's still no intention of using that emergency spillway, but we still can do some repairs on the emergency spillway to get it to at least a capacity of 30,000 CFS. So this is what we said back in March. This was the design criteria that we were trying to establish. So now let's talk a little bit about where we're going. Okay, so let me first start off by trying to explain these pictures a little bit. They kind of work together. So this picture over here on your far left is an aerial view of the spillway. So if you're flying in an airplane and you're looking straight down on the spillway, that's what you would see. This is the gated control structure all the way here at the top, and then it's the flood control spillway as it used to be coming down here, and I'll tell you what those colors are going to be in a minute. And then down here at the bottom, they call those dentates. So that was the end of the spillway. Okay? So let's first talk about what are we going to try to accomplish by 2017. So first we're going to talk about this upper part here. This was called that upper chute. And in the previous picture, what I showed you is, remember, we were trying to get to a design criteria of 270,000 CFS by November 1st. So how are we going to get there? And what are we doing? So what we're going to try to do is we're going to actually leave this piece of it alone. So this is the flat part of the spillway. It's actually in really good shape. It's very, what we found, and we kind of knew this before, but one of the reasons why it held up so well is it's actually a very hard, competent rock. And so that's going to be repaired, but in 2017, we're not going to do that. All we're going to do is we're going to do some minor modifications to do slight repair on it to get through next winter. But where we're going to be spending most of our time on the upper part of the chute, remember this part up here, is we're really going to be spending this part down here. So we're gonna replace about 870 feet of concrete. We're gonna take out the concrete that's there, we're gonna rip out some of the rock, and then we're gonna place it what's called structural concrete. And we'll talk a little bit about what structural concrete means in a minute. So that's the upper part of the chute, and if we get that done, we're in good shape for 270,000 CFS in the upper part of the chute. Now let's shift to the lower part of the chute. What are we going to do? How are we going to get that criteria of 100,000 CFS? Now it would be fantastic if we could get the whole thing done and get structural concrete through the whole entire spillway. That's really not practical. It's just too much work to do it in a short construction season that we have to deal with. So what we're going to do is, if you all remember from previous pictures, and you can look at the pictures in the back, there's these two big holes down there, and that's what was eroded from the flows from last year. And so these holes are going to be filled up, 1,000 feet of it, and it's going to be filled up with what's called roller compacted concrete. And so roller compacted concrete is a technology that we now use in dam construction. So if you look at the dams that were built back in the 50s and in the 60s, and even some in the 70s, they were built with what was called mass concrete, where you just start building a dam and you put a bunch of concrete in and you build it up that way, block by block. Nowadays, we don't build concrete dams that way. Nowadays, we generally build it with what's called roller compacted concrete. This is also concrete, but you place it in a different manner. So instead of placing it by buckets, you place it kind of like you place earth fill. You basically lay it down and then you compact it in place, and you do it layer by layer by layer. And the reason why we're doing this is a much, much faster way to place concrete these days. And that's how they build dams nowadays, with this roller compacted concrete. So we're going to place this roller compacted concrete, which is going to be the base for the future, and we'll get into that. And then finally, in the lower part of the lower section, we're going to do some structural concrete in that area. And so 350 feet of structural concrete. And again, let's talk a little bit about what structural concrete is in the next few slides. So now, that's 2017. So 2017, we're going to get through this winter. We're going to have a spillway that's mostly repaired. We're going to have a spillway that's going to be able to pass those design criteria that we just talked about. And then we're going to come back in 2018, and we're basically going to finish it. And so again, here's the entire spillway. What do we got left? We have that place that has roller compacted concrete. We're going to come back, put on top of that with structural concrete. We're going to put that back. And then we're going to go and we're going to refurbish those energy dissipators that are on the bottom of the hill right now. So they're still there. They got pretty beaten up. They're going to have to be repaired. And so this will also be part of 2018 of next year. So let's talk about a little bit about what have we been doing. How far have we gotten? I'd invite you to look at some of the photographs on the DWR website, as well as some of the progress that you could actually see on a day-by-day basis. So the first thing that had to be done is, this is the lower part of the chute. These are those dentates we talked about. We're looking towards the top. We had to remove this concrete here. And so if you were to go out there today, you don't see any of that concrete there. You don't even see any of that concrete up here. It's all been removed. You need to remove that. You needed to remove the concrete underneath that, and you needed to remove some of the rock for the foundation. And that's all been taken out, as you can see by this picture. So this picture is actually a few weeks old itself. But you can see what used to be here is no longer here. There's those dentates. That's all been removed. That's called foundation preparation. You're getting the foundation ready to take those layers of concrete, and that's what's happening. Now, how do you do that? You have to do it by blasting. So first thing you want to do is you want to take out that concrete in the most efficient way. The way you do that is you blast the concrete apart. It separates the concrete away from the still. It's much, much easier to remove that way. Along with the concrete, you actually have to blast some of the foundation rock underneath it, and that's what's kind of going on in this picture here. So that's been done. When you build a dam or when you do a spillway, anytime you place concrete on a foundation, you want it very clean. You want it to have a really good contact. You want that concrete to stick to that rock. And so what these guys are doing here is they're water blasting that rock and they're cleaning it up so it's going to be nice and clean. There won't be any dirt on it. There won't be any loose material on that. So when you come back and you put that concrete on top, it's going to adhere to it really well. What they're doing over here is these are forms. They're forming it right now. They're already placing concrete out there, so the concrete's being placed against these forms. It's happening right now. And then we're putting in what's called reinforcement. So this is where I talk about structural concrete. So when we talked about roller compacted concrete, or a lot of dams around the world, they're built with mass concrete. There's no still in that. There's no reinforcement. But what we do on something is, when we talk about structural concrete, when we talk about slabs of 18, 24, 36 inches thick, you actually have to put reinforcement to bind that together. Concrete's really good in compression. It's not really good in tension. Reinforcement helps that from cracking. And so as you can see here, that's a lot of reinforcement that's going to go in this particular spillway. That's being placed in certain areas, and you're going to see a lot more of that coming up. Now let's jump over to the emergency spillway. What are we doing over there at the emergency spillway, and where are we? Okay, so let's reorient ourselves. Here's the emergency spillway. The reservoir's back here. The dam's way over here on this side. And so what we talked about last time is we were going to put a cutoff wall. They call this a cutoff wall, a secant wall. So think of a wall actually buried into the ground. And that's what we have here. So if you could see these dashed lines here, this is trying to signify the wall that's actually going to be buried into the ground. Now, why do you want to bury a wall into the ground? The reason you want to bury a wall into the ground is, although there was rock at the surface, what we saw is when that water started coming over, it started plucking that rock. And it started what they call head cutting. It started at the bottom, and then it works its way back up. Now, how do you stop that from happening? The way you stop that from happening is putting in a concrete structure to be able to stop that rock from coming back. It's going to hit that wall, and it would stop it wherever it used again. Now, what we're also going to do, and that's going to happen in 2017. So by November 1st, that secant wall, that wall buried into the ground, that's going to be completed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put roller compacted concrete between the weir. So here's the rear. This is a cartoon version of the emergency spillway over here. And this is going to be a roller compacted splash pad. So just think of concrete laying on the surface like a pad. And so what that's going to do is that's going to help prevent erosion between the spillway and this wall. And then they're going to put another roller compacted concrete buttress up against the existing weir. So here's the weir. This is going to buttress that weir. So this is going to be a much, much stronger situation than what we had. So again, we're going to finish this by 2017. If water were to come over, it's going to help prevent that erosion from head cutting back to your weir, because that's really what you need to protect. You don't need to protect the rock downstream. You need to protect this to make sure that you don't lose that. And then we're going to come back in 2018 for these other features to strengthen that particular emergency spillway. So how are we doing all this oversight? Who's looking at us? Who's actually doing the work? So the Department of Water Resources is taking the lead on the design. You all know Kiewit Constructions. They're taking the lead on actually doing the construction. DWR also has a lot of consultants working for them, helping them with the design. And then you have folks actually overseeing the design as well as the construction aspects. And who are those people? So the first is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So FERC is responsible for dam safety across the country. They have about 2,200 dams across the country, and they are responsible for reviewing the plans, reviewing the specifications, ensure that those plans and specifications are going to be able to meet the criteria that we're establishing. And then they're also going to review construction to make sure that the construction is going in the way the plans and specifications said that it would. In addition to the Federal Regulatory Energy Commission, there's the California Division of Safety of Dams. Now those folks are responsible for about 1,250 dams throughout the state. Now they are also reviewing the plans and specifications to ensure that the criteria is satisfactory and that the plans and specifications meet that criteria. And then they're also reviewing the construction. So they go out there daily, they're watching the construction, they're making sure that DWR and the contractor is adhering to the plans and specifications. And then finally, you have a board of consultants. So these board of consultants, these are worldwide experts specifically in dams. Some of them are very specific in very specific areas of dams: hydraulic engineers, structural engineers, construction engineers. Now they're overseeing everything. They're overseeing FERC, they're overseeing California Safety of Dams, and they're overseeing DWR. So these are the three entities that are overseeing the construction, as well as they oversaw the design of the plans and specifications. Now let's shift over to the forensic team. So don't confuse the forensic team with the board of consultants. The forensic team is a completely different entity. Now these are our experts. There's I think 5 or 6 of them, and they're experts in a variety of things. They're experts in dam safety. They actually have expertise very specific to structural engineering as well as spillways. Some of these folks, that's all they've studied is spillways their entire careers. They're also familiar with how dam safety organizations are supposed to work, how owners are supposed to oversee dam safety, how the human factor actually affects dam safety. So this forensic team was established by the Association of State Dam Safety Officials and the United States Society on Dams. These are 2 non-governmental organizations. They're the strongest organizations, or really the only dam safety organizations in the United States. And the Department of Water Resources went to these organizations, and to make sure this is a fully independent body, they asked these organizations to actually pick the members. So they got world-class members to actually understand what happened. What happened out there? What were the problems? What were the issues? And how did this all happen? So the forensic team is studying that right now. They're looking at thousands and thousands of pages of documents. They're interviewing folks. They're making sure that they have a good understanding how that dam and spillway were built and what happened for the 60 or 50 years since it was constructed. And then finally, we have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So the Corps of Engineers were absolutely instrumental in the response. So as soon as the emergency happened, DWR was spread a little bit thin. They needed some additional help. They went to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps of Engineers came over. They supplied some expertise to help get through the emergency. Now what we have is the Corps of Engineers is intermittently helping on different aspects of the design. So they looked at the design plans, gave comments to the Department of Water Resources. So they're yet the additional body, 1, 2, 3. They're like the 4th body actually helping the design and as well as the construction. The Corps will be here tomorrow to actually look at construction progress of where we're going. So with that, let me hand it over to Aaron, who will talk a little bit about community outreach, engagement, and a few other things.
Hi all, thanks so much Dave. I'm Erin Mellon, I'm the communications manager for the Oroville Recovery Project. I work for the California Natural Resources Agency, which is the agency over the Department of Water Resources. So as this meeting shows, we're working on creating a broad communications and engagement effort to keep communities and residents informed about the recovery project and also build relationships so we can address some long-term concerns from your community and make sure that we are rebuilding relationships and being more involved in the community so that we put systems in place to obviously ensure this doesn't happen again. One of the components of this is obviously regular public meetings. This is the 2nd round. As many of you raised your hands, really happy that you were able to join the 1st round of 7 community meetings. This is the 2nd round. We're doing 3 in this set, and we plan to have more community meetings as we go forward. Before all of these community meetings, we also have stakeholder and elected briefings. We had one today with many of the members that Joel introduced earlier at the beginning of this presentation. We also try to have one-on-one meetings with your elected officials. We attend city council meetings and county supervisor meetings, and Oroville Strong and ORAC, and we are trying to be engaged in many of your community's organizations. We have bi-weekly media conference calls. I'm sure you've seen much of the coverage from those. We are conducting weekly site visits for community elected officials as well as the media, local media. We have community advisories regarding construction updates as well as things that might be relevant to your community, like the siren testing or when we're changing flows, things like that. We have collected all of your email addresses. Hopefully you are giving them to us. We're not selling them. We are trying to communicate directly with you and provide you those relevant updates to your community. Sorry. This is just more of what I said earlier, so sorry about the repetition. We have been using these community meetings as an effort to collect asks from all of you. These are kind of topic areas that you have brought up in the previous community meetings. Obviously, there are specific projects or asks that you have made. We are tracking those individually. We're getting feedback from your elected officials and stakeholders to exactly what your concerns are, trying to track all of your individual questions. We've received about 300 or so emails and calls, and we're answering each one of them individually, and again, tracking them to see if there are other projects or actions that we can take to address those concerns. One example, obviously, is lake levels. Some of you are contacting us asking for lake levels to be higher. Some of you are contacting us to have lake levels lower. We're trying to balance those requests and communicate to you all about what our plan is related to that. We don't have all the answers, certainly not today. We are still in the collaboration part of this process to make sure that we are capturing all of your asks. So transparency and communication, I think that was a big theme in the previous community meetings. I'm sure it will be today again. One of the asks that you guys have had is for unredacted documents. Another is timely and frequent updates regarding things that impact the community, like sirens, constructions, trail closures, etc. And I'm reading off a piece of paper because we've been writing down your questions word for word. This is a quick kind of oversight or overview of what we have been doing related to this. Like I said, we've been doing site visits for elected officials. We've worked with state parks, and thank you very much to the folks that are here who have helped set up these live stream cameras so that you can keep track of our construction progress 24/7. We have been releasing the Board of Consultants memos. That's the independent team that is providing oversight and review of our construction plans. We've put out 8 of them so far. The last 2 have had no redactions in them whatsoever. And one of the reasons for that is they just didn't put anything in it that was critical energy infrastructure information. But I would say because of concerns from your community, we are assessing all of our documents, both the Board of Consultants memos as well as everything else, and doing our best to limit the redactions to provide you as much information as we possibly can without risking public safety. The forensics team a couple months ago put out a preliminary memo listing 24 potential preliminary causes. They have not put out their full report yet. We're expecting that in fall, and once we receive it, we will make it public. We put summaries of all of these meetings online as well as videos. As you know, we also Facebook Live them, and we are responding to all of your questions and calls personally. With specific answers to your questions. I think we've got over 300, and we're about 95% complete in responses, and still working on that last 5%. And obviously, we'll have a new tranche of questions coming in from today's meeting, and we're looking forward to that. Addressing downstream impacts. You have asked for more gradual flow changes. You'd have asked for advanced notification of when we make significant flow changes. You've asked for an analysis of impacts from high water events. You've asked for us to work on improving channel capacity and dredge further downstream. You've asked for increased funding to the local maintaining agencies for levee investments. And like I said earlier, we don't have all of the answers here today, but I will say that everything is on the table, and we are collecting everything, and we are assessing them, and we hope to come to you with tangible projects that we can do to address some of these concerns. So as far as what we've done so far, we are slowing down our ramping up and ramping down rates when feasible. And I turned it off. I don't know what I did. While Dave figures that out, I'll just keep going. We are working on providing notification of those flow changes to you all within about 48 hours of when we make them. We are working with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to make a decision on spawning gravel. We do have a plan right now to add 5,000 cubic yards of spawning gravel this year. And we are also conducting, and forgive me for pronouncing this wrong, but bathymetry surveys to assess where levels are in the lake, in the river downstream, to assess the impacts of both the high water event and, of course, the spillway incident. And this is more information about what we have done to address downstream impact concerns so far. So as you can see, through many years, we've invested approximately $366 million for repairs and improvements in the Feather River Basin. Over the February and March high water events, we've provided $4 million for direct assistance at 6 Feather River sites. And we are talking to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and they are evaluating requests for additional levee repair funding. And we are reevaluating the Feather River flood flow conveyance subsequent to the 2017 high water event earlier this year. Reservoir operations, like I said, I know lake levels are of huge concern to the community here. I think we're really happy to be able to keep lake levels high during the last couple of holidays, including 4th of July. I believe the lake levels were at about 814, and right now I think we're at 807. So we're thrilled to have been able to keep the lake that high and provide additional access to boat ramps. You've also asked for an update to the flood control curves, and I think you'll remember from our first round of public meetings that ask was made of the Army Corps back in February by Governor Brown, and they would lead the process to update its flood control manual, but we are also creating an interim operations plan, and we plan on working with many of you to develop that. Impacts of construction, again, I know this is of utmost concern. Road repairs, making sure that we limit traffic, especially during commuting times, to minimize your traffic. Address potential damage to your cars from potholes or rocks hitting windshields, for example. I know construction noise and light pollution has been a concern, especially during the nighttime. There have been many questions about how are we monitoring air quality and improving dust mitigation strategies. And then, of course, having access to viewing the construction efforts. Like I said, we have those live video cameras up online. We are currently working to pay for repairs to non-haul roads, hoping to get those systems in place very shortly. We are limiting the number of trucks a day on these haul routes. We are working with the city and county to update our traffic plan in response to the new information that we received from you all. We are meeting individually with residents, and I encourage you to keep calling us and hounding us to come out and talk to you about your specific concern. No two issues are the same, so we need to talk to you about your individual concerns. We are working to shift our construction patterns to conduct noisier activity during the day in the hopes that that helps you all out. And we are working with the Butte County Air Quality Management District to address any concerns related to air quality, and we have one of the most robust dust mitigation plans that I know many of our engineers have seen on this project. Recreation in the local economy. Again, I think the ability to use boat ramps both in terms of lake levels and access to those boat ramps, sorry, I must be hitting a button. That's obviously important. Improved trail access has been an ask of many of you. The funding and sponsorship of local events and outreach to help stimulate the local economy and reduce the stigma after the result of the February incident. So we are working to improve campgrounds, trails, and boat launch ramps. We are working on improving the maps. We've helped sponsor a couple of events recently. We provided a few road improvements specific for the Wildflower Century Run. We obviously were thrilled to participate in the Riverbend Park cleanup here in the community. Both DWR staff volunteered their time and some of their resources, like construction equipment, to do that, and our main contractor, Kiewit, put in a lot of effort for that, and we were really happy that they were willing to participate. The 4th of July fireworks obviously were a huge success. I think it was the second most people to attend a fireworks show since 2011 or something like this. And obviously we are working with your local partners like the Oroville Chamber of Commerce to help promote any local events that we possibly can. In all of our messaging, the fact is Oroville is open for business, and we keep pushing that message. I'm not going to go through all of the recreation projects that we have done, but certainly highlight some of the parking lot expansions that we are working on, both boat ramp expansions. We have set up shuttles to bring people down and back up from a couple of the main boat ramp launch areas. And I know everyone's wondering about the emergency spillway boat ramp launch. I know that these efforts don't replace the loss of that, and I hear you, and we are working to figure out alternatives to that boat ramp launch. If it is adding additional launch facilities from other parts of the lake and improving access to those, we're still assessing. So if you have ideas, we are certainly open to hearing them. We have reopened a couple of trails, and obviously a couple months ago we announced the approval for early release of $3 million from the Supplemental Benefit Fund. Here are just some contact information for us. There's a 1-800 number, 1-800-248-7026. If you leave a message there, you will get a call back. Oroville at water.ca.gov is the best place for you all to reach us. And obviously, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And then our new Spillways webpage has a lot of this information linked to it directly, including photos and video streams. And then I'll pass it back to Mike.
All right. I can't imagine anyone has a question. But it's time to get to your questions. If you had not submitted a speaker card, now would be the time to fill out your speaker card. If anyone needs help filling out a speaker card, just let us know, and one of our team will help you fill it out. We want to make sure you can get your question answered. I have about 25 speaker cards up here at the moment. I have no doubt I'll get some more. So the way we're going to do this so people don't have to line up at the microphone is that I'll do my best to remember to call out 2 names. And when your name's called, just you can come up, ask your question, and the panel, or if you're offering a comment, please feel free to do that. And our team members will do their best to answer your question. We have a whole lot of expertise here. I think our table is overflowing. If you are going to offer a comment or ask a question, we do have a countdown timer here. It's just to help you figure out where you are. We are asking everyone to honor the 3-minute time limit. If you do some math, if I've got a minimum of 25 questions, I want to give everyone an opportunity. And I will say that at each of the public meetings in the first round, I was left with speaker cards that we didn't get to answer because people just couldn't stay. And so I really would like to give everyone a chance to speak tonight, and it really is up to everyone else to see if we can't make that happen. All right? Now, we'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds remaining to help you time your landing. All right? Next, I think here. Okay, and as I said, I have the little rule 1 of 3. One person, one opportunity to either ask a question or offer one comment. 3 minutes. Now, I've already looked at some of the speaker cards and people have said, I have 4 questions. All right. Well, how about a question with 4 parts? That's okay. We'll do the best to answer them. But what doesn't work is if someone just comes up to the microphone and rattles off literally like 17 questions in the space of 3 minutes. It's really kind of challenging. I get it. You have a lot of questions, but give us a chance and give everyone else a chance here too, okay? All right. So I'm going to start with Don. Blake, you are speaker card number 1, and on deck is Sherry Bunker. All right, Don, and let's make sure that the audio works as well, too.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Can you hear him?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Can we turn that up a little? All right.
1, 2, 3, 4. Are we good?
Good for me. Let's give it a shot, Don.
All right. I really don't know where to start. It's just that you folks don't get it. Mr. Gutierrez, I'm going to respond to you directly first. If DWR ever thinks to put 270,000 cubic feet per second into the Feather River, you're going to be destroying Oroville, Marysville, Yuba City, and getting Sacramento wet. You'll be killing people and destroying property. You know, DWR has used Oroville and Butte County as its colony for nearly 50 years. You've taken billions of dollars worth of raw material, water, from our Feather River and exported it to Southern California, where it was used to create your economic empire. You gave nothing in return. You left us with the burden of dealing with the adverse consequences of your decisions. The time has come for us colonists to revolt. I'm done bitching. What I am going to do is this. From February 7th to February 12th, your management made conscious decisions to endanger our lives and despoil the Feather River in an effort to protect the long-neglected spillway. You knew on February 8th that water would be coming down the emergency spillway, eroding the hillside below, hence hiring crews to cut down and remove the trees and large brush and the relocating of the PG&E power lines. This was not an act of God. The resulting damage was a direct product of your bad decisions. The only way to prevent such bad decisions in the future is to impose sanctions now. You simply cannot get away with dumping thousands of tons of rock, mud, and debris into the Feather River. That bad conduct violates both state and federal clean water laws. I am going to seek to meet with Mr. Mike Ramsey, Butte County's district attorney, to encourage him to impanel a grand jury to investigate and to seek criminal indictments against the decision makers at DWR. I'm also going to suggest that he file a civil action against DWR and the water contractors for money damages. I'm also going to meet with the district attorneys from Yuba and Sutter counties seeking similar relief in their jurisdictions. No more bitching. Perhaps real consequences will make a real difference.
Dave.
Okay, so I think a lot of it was just comments, and we'll take those comments, but there was one very, very important thing that was said that we definitely want to clear up, because that's completely inaccurate. So when I suggested that the design, I tried to be very clear on this, that's the design capacity. What you have is you have a capacity. The capacity of the spillway, the upper spillway, is 270,000 CFS. The capacity of the entire system is over 700,000 CFS. Now that doesn't mean you flow 270,000 CFS down the river. That just means that's the capacity. There's factors of safety built into that. Everyone understands that the levees don't have a capacity of 270,000 CFS, and in no way do you pass 270,000 CFS unless you have this mega storm that cannot be handled by the reservoir. So it's very clear, it's got to be very clearly understood that 270,000 CFS is just the design capacity. It is not what you flow the spillway out. There's curves to do that. The maximum flow that this spillway has ever seen was 160,000 CFS. I think that happened once. There was a couple of times at 150, I believe. A few more times at 100, but never has it gone above 160 in the 50 years, and there is no intention of doing that. You don't operate the spillway that way. So don't get confused between capacity and actual flow. So what I was trying to suggest is that's what you design it for. That's not how you operate it. So that's really important to make sure that that distinction's understood.
Thanks, Dave. All right, so Sherry Bunker, you are up.
Yes,
and,
sir.
Next up is Patrick Porkins. Okay.
Congressman LaMalfa, members of the Oroville City Council, the Oroville Chamber of Commerce, Suffolk County Board of Supervisors, the City of Biggs, and other groups are in the process of asking FERC to delay the issuing of a long-term license. My question is, DWR willing to join with us to delay the license for long-term until this event has been evaluated?
I mean, I think the decision, that's a FERC decision, but I think the department wants to do the right thing, and I think the important part for us is getting this spillway done and all the efforts that come with it. So, I mean, I think that we're going to comply with whatever FERC asked us to do. I mean, I don't think it's a position of us supporting a delay or not. It's a FERC jurisdiction. We're going to do whatever FERC asks us to do. But in this meanwhile, we're going to do all we can to support finishing up the spillway.
My name is Patrick.
Okay, Patrick, hold on a second. Let's see, next up is Tasha Levinson. Okay, Patrick.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Porgans. I'm with Porgans and Associates. I've been on the river for 45 years. I know a little bit about how the operation of the reservoir is conducted. I'm going to correct somebody right now. The maximum outflow on that control spillway was 167,000 CFS. The question I had on that 5.2 million acre feet is a multi-part question. What was the maximum inflow into the reservoir during that event?
The question, Patrick, was for which event?
For the May 7th, excuse me, the February 7th.
No, February 7th, yeah.
Through the 12th.
So the maximum inflow was nearly 200,000 CFS. And so, as you recall, the maximum outflow was 100,000 CFS.
Okay,
so essentially half of what the maximum inflow was, and that potentially could have gone down the river. So the dam did serve its flood control function with that respect. And that's been the case, 97, same thing. We had 300,000 CFS coming in, the 160-some thousand CFS going out. Same in 2006. We had 160,000 CFS coming in, 80,000 CFS going out. So essentially the dam has served its purpose in terms of cutting those maximum inflows essentially in half.
Okay. Now he ate up a few of my minutes.
Fair enough.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But the question is, according to the manual, we did not experience the standard project flood. The standard project flood is 440,000 coming in with a 1.5 million acre feet of water in the 72-hour period. So yeah, the dam is working the way the manual is supposed to work. But you've never experienced the standard project flood, not counting the maximum project flood, which would put us over that 700,000 mark. You have exceeded the downstream channel capacities in the past in 97. I've been involved in every major lawsuit. You lost because we provided information to show that there was a maintenance, operational, and in this case, a managerial decision. I'm coming in and I'm conducting a forensic accounting. I'm a forensic accountant. I'm coming in and I'm going to look at everything that happened here. When you tell me the Department of Safety and Dams is involved here, that's part of the Department of Water Resources. When I went there to get the records to try to find out on the annual inspections, which the Department of Water Resources, that's a division of the Department of Water Resources, is responsible for, they didn't even have the records there. Had them over in the main building. I'm saying to you that I want to compliment you on your progress, on getting to where you are, which is a monumental feat, but the basic indications that I have now, this was a managerial issue. This was an O&M issue. So there was no God-created situation here. The Department of Water Resources is responsible, and anybody that had to move out of their homes because of that last-minute emergency, which you obviously put on the sheriff's back, I'm saying they should be compensated. Now, the last point I want to make is while you're up there, trying to fix your mistakes, I'm saying, what have you done downstream from where the diversion pool is? I've been in touch with the Corps of Engineers. I've been in touch with NIMS. I've been in touch with the California Department of Fish and Game, or Fish and Wildlife, whatever you call it. And I've been in touch with several other agencies. You have not filed for a 404. You have not filed for a 401 under the Clean Water Act. That's a navigable river. We're now going out and taking, I want a geomorphological study to show the impacts that you've created. We've got sands in some areas 5 and 6 feet deep. So I'm going to conclude by saying this 3-minute stuff, I appreciate that. You have all the time in the world to get your scripts together. These people are the victims, and you are the perpetrators. The greatest risk to the people in this area downstream from that dam is not terrorists. It's you.
Thanks very much for your comments, Patrick. I would just say that the inspection reports from the Division of Safety of Dams are on our main webpage.
Okay. Tasha Levinson, you're up, and then next up is Jack Keeley. Is that right?
I want to second the preceding gentleman's comments that this was an entirely expected and predictable. This was an entirely expected and predictable event. I just learned from Supervisor Connolly that the emergency spillway was for the protection of the dam, not for the protection of the people. It was designed to break away and therefore relieve pressure off the dam. So all of this talk about how this was so unexpected is kind of a little bit backwards. Secondly, with this licensing business, we've waited 11 years while they were doing ecological and biological studies to make sure that you guys could get your license. Now that's all gone for waste. You guys have really, by poor management, hurt yourself as well as Oroville. We'd like to see you change your culture, get your act together, be responsible, care about what you're doing, care about the people in this town. And then finally, the putting in these expanded parking lots where we have to pay fees means that they are unavailable for the people of this community to use those facilities. We should, at the very least, by virtue of our zip codes, be able to come in and no parking fees and be able to use these facilities at no cost to us at all. The very least you could be doing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much. That's a fair point about the parking fees. I think we can talk to Department of Parks and Recreation about if we're able to set something like that up, but that's a fair enough suggestion, so thanks for that. As far as, I don't know if someone wanted to talk about the purpose of the emergency spillway. I just want to clarify one thing. When we talk about Mother Nature having an impact on what happened here, we certainly are not claiming that we're not claiming that the erosion caused that. We're telling you that the weather that happened impacted how we dealt with the erosion. Obviously, the erosion was something completely separate than the large storms that lay over the reservoir. But it is, there are two different aspects that I want to make sure that we're being clear about. I don't know if anyone...
Okay, so Jack, you're coming up, and then next up is Robert Wiesdown.
Yeah, Jack Kiley of Oroville. I'm going to touch a little bit. I've been around long enough to see what's happened for 50 years, so I'm going to give you a little report card on how Oroville is doing. The city has been 50 years here now. We've been a city in decline. We have vacant buildings downtown. It's nice you're here because you'll have daylight if you haven't seen. Take a walk down a couple blocks. 50 years ago, this was a booming town. Everything was filled. There wasn't any vacant buildings. We've had stagnant growth. The parks are underfunded and damaged. The city manager is doing 3 jobs. The police chief is doing fire chief duties, and the departments are understaffed. 41% of the Oroville residents live below the poverty level. Home values have decreased 12% over the last 5 years. And now the dam safety creates a dark cloud over the community. So that's where we are today. And the things I think that have happened here were predictable, preventable, and their good news is they're fixable. And I think that's what your forensic report will put out. And so what I'm trying to say is the city of Oroville needs help now. When they help, I'm talking money. So I'm going to touch a little bit at one of my favorite topics is water. Is there anybody here from the Metropolitan Water District, Southern California tonight? In here? They should be. because they're the benefactors. They get about half the water that comes out of Lake Oroville. And the thing of it is, I'm going to touch a little bit on the municipal water districts. They serve some towns you may have heard of down there. There's about 26 of them. Like the city of Los Angeles, they pay $46.50 for 10 units of water. Long Beach, $44. City of Burbank, $24. City of Beverly Hills, $41. City of Fullerton, $39. And it goes on here and the different ones. But anyway, the average cost of water that they take from Lake Oroville to those customers down there, it averages out $38. Guess what Cal Water customers pay here in Oroville? Would you believe $61.53? And so what I'm talking about is the money we're funding. And we talk about the Supplemental Benefits Fund of $1 million. Somebody has been in the background is clapping, we got away with robbery from Oroville. But if you look at the Metropolitan Water District, they have about 12 million water customers down there. If they raise their rates $2 a month, be $24 per customer, their rates would be considerably less what you're paying here in Oroville. That would raise $24 million a month, or about $288 million a year. That is enough money to take care of Mr. Lamoff's, all the items we put in there, the levies and this here. We need a flow of money. It's there. It's you people in this room could basically make that decision. And I don't think the Municipal Water District of Southern California would object to paying $2 a month to have a dependable water supply with the levees fixed and everything there. The money's there. We need it to happen. And I don't know, we need the money now in Oroville. You can see that. You can walk out here and see it. It hasn't happened for 50 years. Hopefully, you've got concern, you wouldn't be here, but what we need is commitment that you will take action on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any feedback? Okay, so Robert, welcome back. And up next is it Grayson Reynolds? Okay.
All right. Hello, my name is Robert Dunn. I'm a professional fishing guide. I own Northern California Guide Service. I've been in business since 1985. I'm also the treasurer of the NorCal Guides and Sportsmen Association. I represent thousands of sport fishermen and environmentally conscious people who want to see our rivers maintained and be healthy. I have a couple questions today. I've been working with the board here about gravel restoration and fishery enhancement. And I'd just like to get a real update on how the gravel restoration project's going in detail, and also the communications with the Department of Fish and Wildlife about the raising of more salmon and steelhead as a mitigation to the fisheries losses that we've had since the Oroville spillway collapse.
Eric, can you?
Thank you, Robert, for the question. Oh, sure. Oh, my name is Eric C. I work for DWR here in Oroville. I've been here for 24 years. I've worked on fisheries and wildlife and recreation programs during that time. And I have some good news. We just recently had a project approved to do gravel restoration. I think Aaron had mentioned that a little while ago. We're going to be placing 5,000 cubic yards of spawning gravel in the river adjacent to the fish hatchery. We have a stockpile of gravel there from a previous project that we did back in 2014. So we actually have the gravel supply there. We have the go-ahead from our director, and so we are actively working towards doing that project. You know, I have pretty high confidence we should be able to get that done. To get it done this year, though, means we have to get it done before the end of August. So that's not a lot of time to get a big construction type project going. So fortunately, we've had very good cooperation with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the other regulatory agencies. I think your phone calls and efforts have really made a difference, because I've never seen this much cooperation in this short amount of time to get a project like this going. So it's amazing, and I think we're going to be able to get it done. So anyways. That's the other question about fish from the hatchery. So the Department of Water Resources owns the Feather River Fish Hatchery. We provide the funding for the Feather River Fish Hatchery, but the management decisions as far as the number of fish that get planted, That comes from the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the National Marine Fisheries Service. So it's really not our call. I know you've made this request, and so they would be the appropriate entity to be able to provide that decision. We provide the hatchery. We'd be more than willing to allow our hatchery to be used in that way and pay for the fish food and that sort of thing. But that's really not DWR's call. We don't have that authority. So you need to take it up with those folks.
Could you give me the name of the individual who would make that decision on to raise more fish at the hatchery to mitigate the losses?
It would be someone in the regional office, regional office, or if you call the hatchery, 538-2222, they can direct to the right person. But it'd be someone probably in the regional office that would actually make the biologist in the regional office that would make that call. Colin Purdy, I think, is the senior environmental scientist for this region, so he'd be a good. There's also an office in Chico, and they could probably help you with that as well.
Thank you very much, Eric. It's been nice to work with DWR. We do have positive outlook working with you guys, and again, I offer my services of over 40 years of river experience and studying it throughout my life, and so again, I keep offering my services and advice to help DWR mitigate and rehabilitate our fisheries or any damage that was done to the fisheries.
Thanks, Robert.
I just want to say, Robert, I know our team is looking forward to coming out with you on the river tomorrow, so I think we're sending at least one of our flood management guys out on the trip with your team tomorrow, so thanks for that invite.
Yeah, the trip tomorrow is going to be an airline. We're going to go take a plane out, and we're going to do a aerial study, video and still camera pictures, so we can get a really better look at it. I know we've done river trips with the agency. It was about a month ago. We want to get a bird's eye view and see the silt buildup and some of the issues that are facing us down the road for sediment cleanup and getting the river channel back into its banks where we have a sustainable river for the fish to come up.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so Grayson, you're next, and then after Grayson is Terry Cleland, is it? Okay.
My name is Grayson Reynolds. I'm 16 years old and I live here in Oroville. The February evacuation was the single largest peacetime evacuation in United States history, other than for a hurricane. For California, this was the largest evacuation in state history. We're very lucky that thousands of people did not die after being told that a 30-foot wall of water was headed in their direction within an hour. I want to know why our governor has not made any public visits to Oroville. He made a secret visit several months ago, but he did not speak with any local residents personally. I know that DWR staff has said he is monitoring from a distance, and I know that he has staff that keep him updated on these facts, but he has not made any public appearances in Oroville, and I want to know why he hasn't came and personally met with people impacted by this crisis.
Thanks very much for coming, Grayson. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the governor or his office. I think what I can say is that it's the department's dam, and that's why we're here. That's why you see these representatives here. That's why the director is here. And these are the people who need to hear from you so that we can take action on our department. But I can't speak on behalf of the governor.
Thank you.
Okay, is Terry here? Okay, and then after Terry, Jacqueline Lincoln.
Hello, my name is Terry Cleland. I live in Chico. And before I ask my question, I'd like to, I'm a local person. I grew up here, and I've been really, really proud of all of our local politicians and community members who I just think are doing such a professional, respectful, thoughtful job of trying to put this whole thing back together and protect our community. And sometimes in years past, they do that, the state comes in, the state leaves, and then bye-bye, we never see you again. And it's just so irritating. But so to move things along forward, I'd like to ask, I know that supposedly DWR and Governor Brown formally requested the Army Corps change the federal operating manual in order to reflect current scientific knowledge. Do you know if that's happening?
So yeah, my name is John Lehi. I'm Chief of Water Operations for the State Water Project. As you said, the Governor's Office has requested that the Army Corps of Engineers update that water control manual. So just to be clear, that's a very lengthy process. So for Folsom, for example, that's taken 10 years or so to update the manual. So there's a large public engagement in that. It's almost like the FERC licensing process. So we're not going to wait for that. We're going to respond and change the rules now as part of an interim plan with collaborative with the Corps. This plan will address what the important thing on this is the outflow capabilities of the dam as we go through construction. And so we're going to have to adapt those rules. We're going to have to provide additional vacated storage in that dam for additional protection during construction. And we're already in the process of working with the Corps of Engineers in developing that plan based on science and engineering, and that needs to be approved by both the FERC and the Division of Safety of Dams as well before we go into next winter's.
Will that be put out to the public?
Yes. So we should have that available to the public in the fall.
Thank you. Downstream, I think you guys are supposed to do some renovation. Is that going to happen also? From the silt buildup?
My name is Greg Farley. I'm with DWR's Division of Flood Management. And as we had on one of the slides, we are doing a reevaluation of the system downstream. We talked about bathymetry. What we're really doing is we're doing a hydraulic model to analyze the system capacity. So the key part about that is we've got 6 forecast points, and I know that some of you probably key into those, and from those points we can give you the stage, which is the depth of the water, and also the capacity at those points. So we're looking at the reevaluation through that. In addition, the Corps of Engineers is working on 8 sites along with DWR for repairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So, Jacqueline? And then after Jacqueline is Sherry Smith.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jacqueline Lincoln. I'm speaking tonight because I want to communicate what's really important to Oroville and the downstream communities. But before I do, I want to tell you I do appreciate the DWR's hard work along with Kiewit. And I feel confident that you are going to get the job done, that the spillway will be fixed by November 1st, on or before. I also wanted to thank you for advancing the $3 million to the Supplemental Benefits Fund. But I believe that money was already committed to this community, and it's not new compensation. And I also wanted to thank you for advancing some of those recreational improvements that you spoke about, which you did mention, but I believe you were already going to implement those after the license was issued. Also, thank you for those fireworks on the 4th of July and offering that free billboard space. It's great. We accept those offers and those offerings. They're very nice. However, I think what the people of Oroville and the surrounding areas want is real change, real oversight, and real compensation. Let me give you a few examples. One you spoke about, and that is we want you to amend the operations plan for the lake So you had mentioned that. That's very important. However, I think we're all concerned that it's not going to be amended in enough time. I believe you said it was going to take a year. I don't know how we're going to get this all done before the rainy season starts. But I think that we need it sooner rather than later. Second, we want redundancy. I think it's great you're going to fix the spillways, but we need multiple ways to get the water out of the lake. Now, I clearly think that the power plant and the river valves perhaps need to be looked at. I'm not sure that they were working sufficiently. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty certain it was insufficient, and that needs to be addressed. And also, recently, Folsom Dam just installed a low-level outlet. Well, we want one. That would really help with multiple ways to get water out of the lake. And finally, I realize those things are going to cost a lot of money. But you know, I think all of our lives are worth it, and the state water contractors can afford $15 billion to build the twin tunnels. I think they can afford to help out with making this dam running completely efficiently and construct a low-level outlet. And third, we want local, long-term, independent oversight of the dam and the operations. DWR, you have lost our trust.
Jacqueline, you almost finished here.
Thank you. We need oversight, and my two questions are, with this I ask, what is DWR and the state water contractors going to do to make our communities whole and our dam fully functional? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jacqueline. You're right. A lot of what we talked about so far was going to be done under the new license. As I said at the opening comments, we are not capturing everything that we are doing, and these are just the start of many of the things that DWR plans to implement. Part of this process is hearing from you to get tangible items and projects that you guys are looking for so that we can actually take that back and work on it. I think transparency, for example, means something different to everyone. We've talked with many community members, including the Assembly member Gallagher and Senator Nielsen and Congressman LaMalfa, about a Citizens Oversight Committee. It's on the table. I will tell you that everything is on the table. I don't have a yes/no answer right now, and I don't have a sheet that shows you what we're thinking that would look like. But those conversations are underway. We are working with your elected officials to understand what they think that should look like. This same goes for additional construction work. Obviously, we are committed to this next 2 years and making sure that we get these spillways in a state that we can run water through them both this year and forever for the future. But absolutely, we are looking at auxiliary spillways. We are looking at second flood control outlets. We are looking at low-level outlets. We are looking at increasing the size of the river valves. So all of that is on the table, but that's a very long-term construction plan. We are starting to talk about it today so that we could start implementing those decisions. But right now, what we need to do is fix the spillway and create those changes to the emergency spillway to make sure that we can use the dam or use the spillways in the coming seasons. I think I covered. I've tried to track all of your questions or comments. So if there's anything else, we can touch base after.
Okay, so Sherry Smith, you're up. Yes.
Sorry, I did remember the ask about the updated interim operations plan. I think you might have misheard me. I didn't say that was in a year. I think Mr. Lehi just mentioned that we are expecting to have that out publicly this fall.
Okay, Sherry, and then after Sherry is Larry Grunman.
Okay. My first question is about the inspection reports. I know that DWR has put the Division of Safety Dam reports posted to the DWR website without any redactions. But there are 3 other sets of inspection reports that need to be made public. The DWR Operation and Maintenance Monthly Reports, the annual FERC reports, and the FERC Part 12D reports. When will these inspection reports be made public, and will they too be posted without redaction like the DSOD reports?
Yeah, thanks very much for your comment. The FERC Part 12D reports are actually going through the redaction process right now. We cannot post those without any redactions. There are serious information in there that could be used to harm both the structure as well as the community. But we are going through the redaction process for those, and we do plan to post them online. I don't know if you have an answer as to the other 2.
I mean, our goal is we're going to take all our maintenance records and the whole spectrum of documents and and we're starting to review them for CEII information so that eventually everything is going to be made public. Now, there's a lot of information, and so it's going to take some time, but the Part 12Ds are we're almost done, so those will be coming out shortly, and then we're continuing to work on all the other reports to be able to make everything public. So that's our intention. I don't have a date on the other ones yet because we're working through that, but it won't. I mean, it's important to us to get them out, and we're working on them fast to try to get them all out.
And those will be with redactions, you say?
Yeah, I mean, there is CII in a lot of these reports, so we're just carefully trying to go through that and make sure that no information gets out that can put some of our infrastructure in harm's way.
Okay, I had one other part of, I know that the spillway is definitely, the spillways are the main thing that need to be fixed by November 1st. However, the DSOD inspection reports and outside experts have highlighted other areas of concern. At a recent legislative oversight hearing, Director Croyle said that there was detailed assessment of the entire Oroville Dam complex is underway, and to determine other structures that will need to be repaired, mitigated, or replaced. What is the status of the detailed assessment of the entire complex? Which agencies are involved in performing this detailed assessment? And when will the results of the detailed assessment be released to the public?
So this kind of actually answers one of the previous questions too. So again, the focus is get the spillway fixed by November 1st, and that's where the department really has to spend a lot of their energy. And so they're spread a bit thin right now, but that's what the focus needs to be. But you're absolutely right. The entire structure actually has to be looked at. I think the previous speaker talked a little bit about redundancy. The department's looking at redundancy. They're looking at the overall dam safety issue. That's kind of like phase 3, and that's started, but again, that's going to take there's always an ongoing evaluation of dam. So when you see these Part 12 reports that come out, you're going to see that they're always evaluating the dam. There's always reevaluations of the dam. But on top of that, there's going to be an overall look at the dam. So I'm not sure when that's going to be complete because they just started it. And again, it's some of the same people that are actually working out there to fix the spillway that would have to work on this. So the schedule hasn't yet been established.
Okay, do you know who the agency that will be involved, all the agencies involved to perform this assessment?
So it's mostly a safety assessment, so it'll be some of the same agencies that we showed on the slide.
Okay, and no time as to when it'll
Not
be
yet,
released?
not yet, only because we got to get those folks off of that spillway so they can start working on this, but the schedule is going to be coming out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So Larry Grunman, you're up next, and then Bill Harper after Larry.
Yes, my name is Larry Grunman. I've been a member of ORAC, the Oroville Recreational Advisory Committee, authorized by FERC in 1994, and representing CFA, the Citizens for Fair and Recreational Use of Lake Oroville. There's no question by anybody in this room practically that recreation and tourism is a vital element of this community. And while we appreciate the things that DWR has said they do, I think there was 8 projects that Aaron had listed up there, and ORAC's in discussion with the local engineering group that is very responsive, and we've had uphill battles with them through most of our time, and just recently it got to be a very level playing field, I might add. But we're still trying for a few other things, because those things that was proposed initially were already going to happen in the new license. They were agreed upon way back in 2006. So the other things, though, that we've asked for, and that we've begun discussions with them, and what we want to do is just be sure that the upper management realizes this, because so often, more than a few occasions, that what has happened is where we've gotten an agreement and working with the local people, when it goes upstairs, it's oh, no funds. So we want to be sure that they know what we know, and that the funds are forthcoming. So in that, I'd like to give Cindy a copy of our projects here. And also, I guess, the 3 other projects that have been proposed have to do with shuttles between these makeshift, for lack of a better term, interim things are being proposed to take the place of the lost spillway. Remember, we have about 35 launch ramps at full pool. We'll be losing 40% of those ramps, those lanes and parking, with the spillway being out for at least 2 years, and we've been informed most probably forever. So we've got to look at a replacement for that. One of the projects recently proposed at the ORAC meeting was the peninsula next to Loafer Creek, and it'd be ideal to go all the way out to a ramp that would take care of virtually every water level with an interim parking lot. And the last thing is, and I'm sure Bill's going to speak about this, is walk-in access to the marina at all levels of the lake. Below 730 feet, you cannot walk into the 800 approximate, tenant marina. At that point, you have to go somewhere else and get shuttled to the marina. If you get shuttled to the marina, it takes more and more time, and it overcrowds the parking lots that they're putting there to take the overflow from the lost spillways. So this is going to take a coordinated effort. We need a long-term replacement for the spillways. We need interim relief, and as soon as possible, on walk-in access. You've already heard we're going to go below 700 feet at this point. So we're at that point now. We need these facilities, and we need them now. I do have 2 questions. One is DWR going to be subjected to something along the same lines of scrutiny that was done to PG&E after the St. Bruno incident? They were eventually fined over $1 billion. They had to, people lost jobs, they paid compensations. They did all the things, and they reviewed the entire corporate and cultural institutional things that causes things like that to happen, and they found a lot of them. And I was just wondering if DWR is going to be subjected to the same type of level and in-depth scrutiny that was done to PG&E. And then the second question I have is, why was there so much water in the lake on February 7th anyway? Okay.
Thanks very much for your questions and for coming, Larry. As far as will DWR be subject to the same scrutiny and run into the same world as PG&E there, I can't answer that question until we get the report back from the forensics team and we figure out what actually caused this problem, and then I'm sure it'll become more clear what the fallout is from the incident. As far as lake levels, I'll pass it to John.
Okay, I've been asked to stand up so you can see me. Yeah, why was there so much water in the lake? Well, essentially, we were following the existing flood control rules, and we were at the elevation. We were providing the maximum amount of vacated storage that's required under those core rules at that point in time, and we were providing the maximum protection because the watershed was completely watered up, and it was. So there's a wetness, what they call wetness index, that means we have to provide the maximum amount of protection at that point in time. Now the problem, we were actually in the process of ramping up our releases when the incident happened. And so we were following those core rules exactly. So that wasn't what failed us. What failed us was the actual spillway. So we weren't able to release the water that was required to be released at that time because we had the incident on the gated spillway for the concrete chute at that point in time.
But being that we're already well into the wettest season ever, wouldn't somebody say, hey, we better advance the rules a little bit?
Well, we had been releasing a large amount of water prior to that event just to stay at the level that we were at the time. And with the forecast of that big storm coming in fact, it was the biggest storm we'd seen since, that produced the most runoff since '97. So that was in the forecast, and that's why we were ramping up those releases as required under that flood control diagram. Essentially, we would have been releasing 100,000 CFS at some point in time just following the rules. The problem was we weren't able to release it in a timely manner because of the spillway failure. And so that's what got us into this, in this pickle, if you will, because we weren't, it was the outflow capabilities that was the problem in this particular case.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Bill Harper, you're next, and then after Bill, George Barber.
Good evening. Hey, I'm the general manager at Bidwell Canyon Marina and Lake Oroville Marina. I'll
try and move that up.
So I just want to let you guys know what kind of an impact the two marinas have. Currently, there's about 1,100 boats on that lake, moored privately. Approximately $60 million worth of private property that is in both marinas combined. At lake elevation 700, there will be no launch ramp at Lime Saddle. There will be no access, foot access, to Bidwell Canyon, and there will be a goat trail to Lime Saddle. We all know that there's a lot of storms that happen, and some of these vessels are very large, and with no access to remove a storm-damaged boat at Lime Saddle, there's potential for a lot of environmental problems. We also got to think about the safety of our visitors, because there is no access, so we have to boat everybody. The banks are muddy. So that you guys, I implore you to stay at 7:30, nothing lower. It'll say anything under 7:30 combined, we'll probably have to move anywhere from 50 to 100 boats off the lake for safety reasons at a cost of about $2,000 each. So things start getting really, really expensive under 7:30. And I know I've heard that this is a FERC mandated thing, but I really firmly believe that you don't need that big of a cushion before November 1st. An extra 30 feet is not going to hurt you guys if you're on target. And I've been working on that lake for over 35 years. I've been through the 86, 97, 2017. I've seen every weather condition on that lake. And you're not going to raise that lake up before November 1st over 80 feet. It's not going to happen.
John.
So this is John again. So the 700 foot, yeah, I think it's extremely unfortunate about the recreational impacts. But the safety of the people downstream of that lake is by far the #1 priority for us. And unfortunately, the target is November 1st, but we have to prepare for any unforeseen circumstances. The 700 feet, which is, as you say, it's a large amount of vacant space. It's 2/3 of the lake. It's 200 feet, over 200 feet of vacated storage. But in the event that we haven't experienced, every possible rain event that could occur. We have to be prepared for the unexpected. And so that's why we're taking extra precautions in terms of, we don't have a spillway right now as we sit here right now. We need to ensure that this community is going to be safe. And it's unfortunate about the recreational impacts, but again, and this is something that is required by those that are overseeing us. But quite frankly, it's prudent to have this safeguard in place in terms of the elevation going into where the big risk is, which is next winter during the rainy season.
And I just want to echo what John was saying. The 700 number, while we are targeting it for public safety reasons, it is defined on us by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So I guess it's not up to DWR where we land on November 1st. I think that's important to know.
George Barber, welcome back, George. And let's see, next is Tony Catalano. So I want to ask everyone if you could I've been asked to remind people to get right up against that microphone, but not quite.
Not quite eating it?
Against it, okay.
Thank you. My name's George Barber. I'm here tonight as part of Oroville Strong. First, I want to thank you all for coming and facing this crowd. You guys have a really tough job, and appreciate your efforts and dedication. My main message is about oversight. There's a huge hurdle that has to be gotten over for the people of this community to be comfortable with the results of the repairs, how it's going to be operated in the future, more so going forward than even looking at what happened in the past, because we as a community want people to understand that Oroville is a great place to work and live and recreate. And that outside independent oversight is, I think, what's needed to give that confidence to this community that something won't happen again like happened in February. Thank you.
Okay, George.
Thanks, George. Like I said earlier, I think we're still evaluating the potential of using a citizen group to participate in some of those discussions. But obviously the Board of Consultants is an independent group, and the forensics team are an independent group that DWR was not involved picking, and that's exactly why they were independent, was because they are there to figure out what caused this problem. The Board of Consultants obviously giving us independent overview of our construction plans. So we are implementing those independent groups.
Tony? Okay, and then after Tony is it Terry Feitner?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here and taking all these questions. I just have a request on a project regarding recreation. I'm the director at the Forebay Aquatic Center. We're in the Thermalito North Forebay. We're not as big as the marinas and other recreation providers on Lake Oroville itself, but we do provide a lot of recreation and educational programs to the citizens of Oroville as well as the people of Butte County. We have two tin buildings there, one large tin building that we call the large boathouse and a small one we call the small boathouse. There are ovens in the summer and freezers in the winter. We do operate out of those buildings two rowing clubs, Chico State Rowing Club and the Table Mountain Rowing Club, both operate out of there, and as well as the Butte Sailing Club. A couple years ago, Department of Parks and Rec came to us and asked if we'd like them to build, or if we'd like to work with them to get a new building built, a real stick-built building with classrooms and connectivity and a full kitchen and meeting rooms, lockers, and equipment rental space. We secured the plans for a building from the Humboldt Bay, similar to the Humboldt Bay Aquatic Center last March, and pass those on to state parks. I've talked to our people at the Division of Boating and Waterways, and they're behind us also on getting a new building built, as is State Parks, as we've also been in consultation with Butte County Office of Education, who's interested in starting a STEM center there, which they say would be one of the few, if not the only one in the state based on water. And as Oroville Dam is the keystone of the state water project, it seems only a good logical place for that, as well as we have support from the city of Oroville. So I'm here to ask if you could get us on a list of projects, recreational project for a new building. State Parks has the plans. It would be similar to, as I said, the Humboldt Bay Aquatic Center. And if we had that building, we would be able to help with economic development in Oroville as well as recreation in Oroville and surrounding areas, with more youth and adult boating and water safety programs. We would have business meetings. We'd have adjustable room sizes so we can accommodate different groups. We could have weddings, parties, conferences there, educational programs there sponsored by schools and BCOE. We could even separate our equipment rentals from the rowing program. Our rowing club went down to Oakland over the weekend and got a gold medal, 2 silver medals, and placed in a regatta in the Northwest Regionals. It's very, very exciting. If we could do some of this stuff, we'd really, really love it. We're growing exponentially at the Fort Bay Aquatic Center, and any support that you could give us would only help with economic development and recreational development in the city of Oroville and Butte County. So thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. I think we'll follow up with you directly to get a little bit more information about your project and how we can help. Eric, oh, okay. Perfect, thanks.
All right, so Terry, you're up next, and after Terry is Seth Mitchell.
Hello, I'm Terry Feitner. I'll keep it quick and simple.
You just get right up close to that microphone.
A lot of us are on a fixed income like Social Security, and I was wondering if there's going to be any kind of relief monies for evacuation costs.
I think that's still up in the air. The department doesn't deal with claims directly. I know that DGS is still shuffling through some of the claims that have been made, so I'm not able to speak on that right now, but we can follow up with you directly and potentially connect you to folks to ask your question.
Okay, thanks, Terry. So Seth Mitchell, you're up next, and then Gary Lease.
Hi, my name is Seth. With the Northern California Guides and Sportsmen's Association. I've been a guide on the Sacramento in the area for 15 years. I've been in the organization for 11 years. We talked a little bit about the downstream effects, and I know, Eric, you've been working with our organization on some of those issues, and we appreciate that. One thing that's important is, these downstream effects is at an ecosystem as a whole. Looking towards a future for our fisheries and a future for our sportsmen and a future for our kids that want to recreate and fish. One thing we've seen is that due to the water influence that has been pushed down the river during this event, it's destroyed the banks, it's destroyed the riprap vegetation, the old growth trees, the riparian vegetation, the spawning gravels, the spawning areas, the fish passage areas for our anadromous fish. We like the efforts that have been taking place locally, but we want to see those efforts continue downstream. The gravel, our fish need somewhere to spawn naturally. I know we rely on the fish hatchery a lot to mitigate fish and put fish back in the river. We've got some more fish due to the disaster, but what we're looking for is an overall effort downstream to make sure that the future of this fishery and this river stays healthy. Right now it's in an absolute disaster mode. If the fish try and go back down to the delta, the water is going to be too warm. Our riparian vegetation holds the cool temperatures for that water to continue to be cool downstream, put the fish down and through the delta system and have them come back up, and they're not going to make it with the conditions that we have right now. The sediment has clogged the river channel, and it's disastrous for the fish, it's disastrous for the boating and the recreation, and it really needs to be cleaned up. Aside from the FERC relicensing and the stuff that you are mandated to do, we'd like to see more efforts put into restoring the river back to its natural state. Sustainably, it's not going to be able to take care of itself on its own. Biologically, looking at it, it's a very unhealthy watershed. The banks exceeded their 100-year floodplain, and the fish were lost in orchard fields and areas where they didn't have an area to get back into the river and navigate themselves downstream. So we were really looking for a lot of effort in that. We've been working, our organization has been working with the National Marine Fisheries Foundation, we've been working with Fish and Wildlife, and we asked them, you know, hey, we really got to clean up this river. And all those organizations say that the Department of Water Resources is responsible for doing their efforts on this section of river all the way down to the main stem in Verona. So we are asking you guys to put efforts into continuing putting gravels in downstream, cleaning out the channel, and making sure that the riparian vegetation comes back for a sustainable fishery for not only the wildlife but the fish, so they can navigate and they can live and they can continue to thrive in the areas downstream below Oroville.
Thank you. Eric, did you want to?
I appreciate your comments, Seth. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the relicensing settlement agreement, because you know, that's one of the things that's going to do exactly what you are talking about. We have a whole program that we worked out with the community back in the 2000s that led to that 2006 settlement agreement. So once a new license is issued, that will trigger the initiation of those projects. And it has gravel enhancement in it. It has all the things you just mentioned, riparian enhancement. It has large woody debris that's going to be placed in the stream for juvenile fish habitat. We're going to cut side channels and make more habitat for steelhead spawning. There's improvements at the Feather River Fish Hatchery. I mean, it's a whole habitat improvement program for the lower Feather River that leaves no stone unturned, for lack of a better term. But it's awaiting that FERC license issuance. It was brought up, at the beginning of the proceeding. There was, someone, talked about why is it taking so long? Why has DWR been delaying things? Actually, we haven't. We've been very much an advocate to have that new license get issued, to have it trigger this new restoration program of the Feather River. And that's just on the environmental side. There's also all the recreation projects that will happen as well. So those are all things that you get when that new license is issued. And so we, have been advocating for it. The regulatory agencies have been dragging their feet. They finally, back in December 2016, the National Marine Fisheries Service issued their permit, their biological opinion, which was that last hurdle. And so, we now have all of those things. Now we just need a quorum with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They need to have enough people to vote to approve the license, and we're hoping we're going to get there now. That's what's going to trigger all the things that you just talked about. So I very much am, looking forward to doing that. As far as, the sediment impacts downstream, there probably are some other folks here that could speak better to that, because it's more of a flood control, levee issue than what we deal with up in Oroville. But our FERC requirements, though, deal with the direct impacts of our project and with things within our FERC boundary primarily, not entirely. We are going to do some things downstream of the, in the area of the Feather River in the Oroville area, but maybe a little bit downstream of the FERC boundary. But you get to a certain point past Gridley, you get well beyond the FERC boundary, and it gets beyond the scope of those projects. But the river temperatures, which you also brought up, we're going to be lowering the temperature of the river. We're going to be taking temperatures down. That's another thing that gets triggered when the new license is issued. We're actually going to be releasing water at cooler temperatures from Lake Oroville, and we're going to be spending, I think it's a $60 million estimate, something like that, for some kind of new facility at Lake Oroville to be able to facilitate that, an engineered solution to be able to get more cold water out of the lake on a more consistent basis. High water years we can get it, but it's in those low water years we run into those temperature problems. So all of these things get unleashed when the new license is issued, and that's why we've been advocating so much to have that happen. So,
yeah, I think that, especially with the water temperatures, in particular, aside from waiting for something, these fish need that water now. And I think you guys as the Department of Water Resources can take that opportunity, regardless if we're waiting for something or not, to keep that cold water going, because, we're looking at the downstream effects, and the water is very shallow, and there's no shade for the water, and the fish, if they try and make it back down to the delta system, it's too hot for them, and it's not going to happen, and a lot of the people here understand how much, where did all that silt go that was below the dam? Well, it went downstream, and it kept going downstream, and it's clogging the channels and stuff. We really got to get that cold water, because right now with the situation as is, if we don't get the channels restored, the fish aren't going to have passage. They're not going to make it back down to the ocean. And it's very important, not just for the sport fishing community, but for the ecosystem as a whole. I mean, it's just in a disastrous state right now, and we really need to get that back. You know, I know I'm out of time, but recreation-wise, you know, you guys were looking for some suggestions for recreation, and on the lake in particular, I know that the Dark Canyon boat launch facility definitely needs some work, and the Stringtown facility needs work. There was an individual last time in the last meeting I was here, talked about the dredge ponds down at Riverbend and how the fish got scoured out of there when the high water came. So those are some suggestions I have. Thank you guys for your time, and our organization looks forward to working with you in the future on some of these issues. So, thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
Thanks, Seth. I would just point out, because it is a good point, water temperature and water needs for fish. Obviously, that is something that we're balancing and something that we do want to commit to. But if we release cold water for fish, then obviously that impacts lake levels. So I think you guys can see, and I know I'm talking to a very educated crowd on this, you guys can see the different challenges that go into making a decision for releases and for lake levels, but that's why first and foremost we've got to put public safety up at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think we could balance that. I mean, the warm water releases out of Thermalito do nothing for our anadromous fish that are trying to get back to the ocean. So if we can balance that, you know, and get that cold water and less warm water from Thermalito, that would be great. You know, that would help out a lot. Thank you.
Next, Gary Lease, and after Gary is Jonathan Foxon.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend you on your social media. You've done a great job with that, and the YouTube videos of the drone footage is really good. Okay. I have a two-part question. Back in April of this year, the state park trail crews plotted and flagged a reroute of the Dan Beebe Trail, which is one of the main trails in the state recreation area, with the intention of reopening a continuous trail from the Lake Oroville Visitor Center to the Lakeland Trailhead, and while still avoiding the construction area. Apparently, DWR has put a stop to this project. It's all flagged, ready to go. Could you explain why it's been stopped or just halted, and when we can expect the Dan Beebe Trail to be reopened? And also, on the other side of the river, on the diversion pool, a several mile long barbed wire fence has been installed all along the property line, and the fence zigs and zags following the property line. Why wasn't that fence just put right next to the Burma Road, allowing for the recreational use that could be still allowed on the other side of the fence, and also allow the cattle to keep grazing and keeping the vegetation down in that area? Thank you.
So, Eric, are you the, who's best informed about that?
We're going to call a friend.
Okay, Leroy.
Phone a friend, sorry.
Hi, my name is Leroy Ellinghouse. I'm with the Department of Water Resources, State Water Project
Speak right into that microphone, Leroy.
So the reason that the fence was put where it was defined by property boundaries. That was leased by the neighboring property owner. It's been a long time issue that we've had, and once we determined that we were going to be utilizing Burma Road, we couldn't put cattle along with heavy and fast-moving equipment, so it was a safety issue. The location of the fence was defined by property boundaries between our property and the neighboring property owners.
So about the Dan Beebe Trail question, is that, who has the answer to that one?
The road. Dan Beebe Road. Yeah, I don't know anything about that road right now. Is it by the boathouse?
No, this is the main trail from the visitor center into town.
Yeah, I'm familiar where that is. I don't have an update for you on the specifics on that, but that's something we can get back to you with. But I know exactly what you're talking about, okay. So we'll do that.
Could I just add another request? If for safety reasons or whatever reasons, I know PG&E's working on that side of the diversion pool, could you at least do something so we can go beyond around Glen Pond? I mean, where the gates were put is just in a dumb location, basically, because we could still just create another route around Glen Pond, and it would make a much more pleasant loop, and also allow access from Long Bar Road to the trails. So.
Okay, well, we'll consider that. We need to, discuss that with state parks. And I know that, one of the problems had been the contractor and their potential use of that area, and then the power line work. So I just haven't had an update lately, but we can get back to you on the specifics.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, so Jonathan, are you here? Here you are. Okay. And after Jonathan is Eric Johansson.
Do you want your card, Jonathan, or do you know what your question is?
Wherein Hillway break your finish.
Right, so the question is, what happens if the spillway breaks before it's finished?
Okay, so great question. So luckily, what we have going is we're in the summer months, so we really have a real confidence of the hydrologic conditions in the summer months. We know through August, through September, through October, and even through November, the probability of large storms is not that great. And so what we have is we have plenty of time to get the spillway constructed in the amount of time that we need. So we're putting contingencies over contingencies to make sure we meet the deadlines that we need to do. And that's kind of why we set it out kind of the way I had explained it before, where we couldn't finish the whole thing in one shot. We couldn't finish it in 1 year. So we broke it up, and we're paying attention to finishing the most critical points from a safety standpoint. Thank you for your question.
Eric Johansson, are you here? There you are. No? Is Eric Johansson here? Have a card? No? All right. Let's see. Is the last name Bateman? Robert Bateman? Not here? Okay. Jeff Phillips. Is Jeff Phillips here? No? Okay. How about Celia Hirschman? Okay, Celia. There you go.
My name is Celia Hirschman. I'm a resident. I live in the 1A emergency get out of town card area. The two organizations with arm's length from the design are FERC and the Army Corps of Engineers. Why are we not getting reports and community meetings from them? And I say this because it's quite clear to me, as someone who's watched this from the get, that DWR was sued in court for not paying attention to the erosion of the spillway by the Audubon Society and several other environmental groups years before the actual erosion that occurred in February. So it would seem to me that the last person I would look to give me an independent report would be through DWR. I mean, that's just, I wouldn't do it for anyone else that way. Why should I do it for you? So because this, as was very eloquently put by the 16-year-old in the audience, I think he said he was 16, it was the largest evacuation in our history. The fact is that this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for this community first. I moved here because I love to recreate on the river. I can't go on that river. I live 2 blocks from it. It's horrible now. It's not gonna get good anytime soon. And if the fact remains that DWR, and I'm certainly not blaming anyone in this room, but if DWR was responsible for not taking care of the spillway, which fed millions of people and endangered certainly hundreds of thousands, then I have every right to ask for an independent council of true independence, and for that not to be redacted, for that to be clear, so I know exactly what's going on, because I still live there, and I don't think most of you do. So it's really important to me that I get it right, because I'm not planning on leaving Oroville. Thank you.
Thanks, Celia. I can't speak on behalf of FERC or the Army Corps. I just know that in terms of the department, we are the dam owner, so that's why we are here, and that's why we're putting on these community meetings. We feel like it's our responsibility to come here and talk to you all. As far as not trusting us, I get it, and that is why there are independent reviews, both from the federal agencies, as well as independent teams that were brought on specifically to give this oversight. I think you're referring to the fact that DWR pays for these people to do their work. That is true. But if we didn't, then the work wouldn't get done. So I think that's just a fact of the way that this process works. So we had to be financially responsible for paying the forensic team to review what happened and come up with the exact cause of the failure. And we had to pay for the bringing on the Board of Consultants to give independent oversight on our design plans.
Okay, let's see. Helen Dennis, is Helen here? Here you are, okay. And after Helen is Cassandra Scott. Do you need your card, Helen, or no? No?
Thank you. I have several questions. The first is, I want to know why it is that the employees that you have working up at the dam are not allowed to freely talk to us. Why did they have to sign confidentiality where they can't even talk to us about normal happenings at the dam? I want to know that. That's my number one. Number two, I want to inform you that because we have to have all these workers, which I'm very thankful for, and I'm sure the community is, it has made renting, even a low-income housing, very almost impossible. I have friends that have been looking for months and cannot find housing because it's all taken up by dam workers and people for the fires that are losing their homes. And I'm grateful that they have a place, but it's making it very difficult for, as you heard earlier from Jack, that this community has a lot of low-income people living here, like 48%. And so it's making it almost impossible. And then also, you know, when you're refurbishing the river, don't just do it at the fish hatchery. You destroyed our community's river. Our community has been being destroyed since the 60s. And we're asking you, please, don't just think about it, don't just pass the buck. We need our rivers refinished. We need our waterways to be safe. We, as citizens of this community, deserve and request and have pleaded for this to be done for years. That's why we don't trust you, because you made promises to us, not you individually, but DWR did, of what they would do for us as a community, and not one living thing has been done. Sure, you hand out a little bit of money and you make $3 million sound like a whole bunch. To me, as a poor person, it is. But let me tell you, that's not very much for your pocketbooks. You're getting money from the electric plant up there. You're getting money for the water going south. We're getting diddly nothing. Every one of us had a life-changing event happen to us in February because DWR did not fulfill their responsibilities to this community. My life will never be the same. Every night when I close my eyes, I wonder, is that dam going to break? You tell me it's safe, but how do I know I can believe you? Because I've not been able to believe you since the 60s. I want to know those questions and I want them answered. I want to know why you're not down there dredging the whole river because we have all this silt in there. Sure, you're going to put a little rock in there, a little gravel to cover it up, but what does that do? It moves our river banks higher, where we have less water storage. in those rivers before we have flooding? And how many years have you caused flooding for us? I have known of fishermen being out fishing, out in the water, in their waders, and getting stranded because all of a sudden you decide to release an enormous amount of water and they're almost killed. What happens to the rest of us? As the lady before me said, she loves the river, so do I. I can't go to it. And the rocks that I did see on the news being put down are totally going to prevent me from getting down there to the river because they're so huge I can't get my wheelchair over it. I don't like to play that card, but I have to with you guys because this is impacting all of our lives. Not one of us has had any peace of mind since. And you're not talking about compensating all of us for totally reducing our lives probably by years because of the fear that was put into us and will live with us for the rest of our lives. I'm 70, almost 71 years old. In 1 month, I'll be 71 years old. You guys changed and shortened my life because of what happened up here. It should never happen to this community. It should never happen to anybody. And I don't see you compensating. Every time we want to go up to some place that you guys run, we have to pay to go in. We have to pay to use the campgrounds. We have to pay to use the lake. We have to pay for everything through our nose. Southern California, as it was pointed out earlier by Jack, gets all this water from us, and they pay less than we do. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I went over my 3 minutes, and I will quit. But I want you to remember, I'm not going to stop coming, and I'm going to keep questioning you.
So I hope you keep coming and keep asking questions. So I think Erin is going to respond to some.
A couple of those. As far as claims, DWR does not, the claims are not made with us. We do not make a decision on what claims are paid out. We do not make a decision on what claims are considered legitimate. That is the Department of General Services. As far as why employees are restricted from talking to the public, that is a policy that's put in place by the contractor. It is not something that is up to DWR. Our main contractor, Kiewit, that is common practice for them on their construction projects. That is how they run their business. We have set up many interviews with Kiewit and the Chico Enterprise Record, and we have representatives from Kiewit on those biweekly construction calls. So we are trying to increase access to the construction team, so you can get a first-hand explanation of what's going on there from them.
How much? All right.
Some of those people have been your employees. DWR is their boss. So I can only tell you, I'm not afraid to talk to people, and I do. And when I ask one simple question, how's it going, what's going on, I get put off.
I would love to follow up with you to figure out who those employees are so we can clear it up. I do think that it's important that people who are working on this project, who are the spokespeople for this work, are the ones providing information so that you don't get misinformation. And there is a team of people who have that information, and that's why they're the ones who are interacting with the community. But I certainly don't think that we have told anyone to not say hello or something. So I would love to follow up with you to figure out who those people are and clear that up.
Okay. So is Cassandra here? Here you are. Yes. So, and after Cassandra, David Lewis.
Hi. So, this microphone really
That's
sucks.
stripped out, Cassandra, so unfortunately we're just kind of, I appreciate your willingness.
I just wanted to touch base on a couple things that I didn't get to touch base on last time with the last meeting that I went to.
Yeah, and I remember you had a lot of questions, so what's the best way to manage this, Cassandra?
Okay, basically, on the interim use that you guys were allowed, what level are you guys approved to have the lake at right now? Do you know?
Yeah, this is John Lehi again. So we had submitted to FERC a band, if you will, a range of projected flows between now and November 1st to get to the 700-foot elevation. We're actually operating at the very top of that band right now, so as high as we possibly can and still meet the FERC requirement.
Okay, are you talking about the guidelines that they put in place for the safety of the dam being at a certain level?
Well, so the way that we get to 700 is not necessarily, as was stated before, there's no real concern during the summer because we don't get any large rain events during the summer. But how we eventually get to that November 1st elevation is dictated by a number of needs. The local farmers need water out of Thermalito Afterbay. We have fishery requirements in the Delta. And so a lot of those other factors kind of determine what that pattern is and how we get to that 700-foot elevation.
Okay, so the millions of dollars and all the lives that would be affected or lost because of I mean, it's an outweighing, thing of keeping it at the actual guidelines of what, have been specified for your approval, which I think is about 400 feet, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, less than what you have it at right now. So it's supposed to be like at 235, I think it said, something like that. Maybe it was 435, 2 or 4, but that's still pretty big ways of, for what you were approved for in use of the dam.
I guess I'm a little confused as far as what the concern is.
Well, you guys were only approved for interim use for keeping it at a certain level for the safety of the dam because of the reasons why you can't get your licensings, like the wet spots and, like the seepage, Because I mean, you guys got a panel of experts, I'm just kind of curious how you didn't know that, like just for an example, like overtopping wouldn't be dangerous because it's like one of the #1 causes of dam failures, and how your experts couldn't have figured that out when my 9-year-old figured it out when he plays in the sand, so, and makes little moats and ditches and little dams, and it just...
So Cassandra, I think,
goes down really fast.
I think John wanted to clarify something. Are you suggesting that the elevation in the reservoir is not approved to be higher than 400 some
Yes, that's
feet?
true, yes.
And I think John...
Well, so I'm not sure where that number's coming from, but...
It was the guidelines that was given by whoever did your inspection that said that would, because of this issue, yeah, it couldn't be above a certain level until you got it fixed.
So what I can tell you is that we submit bi-weekly reports to FERC in terms of where we are in our storage and how does that compare to their approved projection throughout the summer and where we ultimately end up in November 1st. And in light of trying to keep things as high as possible for the recreational interests, we're operating at the top of that band as we sit here today.
Well, I don't see how recreation could outweigh the risks of what you guys are doing. Why can't you just follow the guidelines that you've been approved for?
Well, so I think maybe we're conflating things here, but the requirements for flood safety in the summer, there are none because of the fact that we don't receive any significant storms in the middle of the summer. So technically, we could be at 900 right now. There would be no restriction in terms of flood safety. But in order to, as a safeguard, as we talked about before, in order to facilitate the reconstruction efforts of the spillway, we needed to get down to a significant reduction in the storage so we could safely begin that, tearing apart the existing spillway, and have a long enough construction season in order to have that thing rebuilt at least partially by November 1st of this year. And so what we're doing is we're providing space that we're ordinarily not required to provide as an additional safeguard for dam safety purposes.
Okay.
So I think we're over 3 minutes, but what's...
I just had one more little thing. Okay, well, it's not very little, but okay. I don't have like a diagram or anything with me, but the face where the dam was built in between 2 peaks, right? and it has cement slabs in layers as it goes up. And I noticed that the long part on the right-hand side of the lower side of the dam is where you have a lot of seepage, and it's been there since the beginning of the construction of the dam. So it hasn't gone away. And then there's also 2 other areas on the face of the dam that are right there in the seam of those concrete slabs where it leaks through. So, I mean, what's the point of redoing the spillway if you're not going to fix these things? And this is one of the main reasons why also as well that you couldn't get licensed. So I'm wondering, are you guys going to fix that too? I mean, because it's just as important.
I think what you're referring to is on the downstream face of the dam. So when you look at the dam looking towards it, towards the reservoir, that there's green areas where grass is growing periodically. And so that's actually, there has been a lot of discussion about that point. So thank you for the question. Now, it's important to understand actually where those come from. And so that absolutely has to be studied. And it's been studied historically, but what's never happened is there's never been a really good report outlining exactly what that is, how it got there, and what's it doing. And that has to be done. And so that's actually being done right now. There's actually a preliminary report being laid out right now, and then a more lengthy report laid out later. But it's important to understand, for instance, that was actually there before there was any water in the reservoir. So there wasn't even any water in the reservoir.
There was nothing there before there was any reservoir.
No, the dam was built, the dam was finished, the dam was all constructed, all finished, and there was no water in the reservoir on the first year. Yet those green spots were still there. So you know it's not coming through the dam because they were there even before there was water in the reservoir. But, you know, there's certainly an understanding of where that is. But I think to answer your question, what the department needs to do is actually thoroughly not only evaluate it, which they have done, but document that evaluation so everybody actually understands exactly what that is.
Well, I mean, I would imagine it wouldn't be an issue still. I mean, because it's all written down on a lot of you guys' reports, you know, so I figure it's still an issue. And since it's in the seams, if you could, you know, watch how it's built, you know, it's right at the very seams of where those concrete slabs are that enforce the dam. So just...
And that report will be available?
There's a preliminary report that's completed now. That'll be let out, but then there will be a more pretty comprehensive report on this whole study. Because as you are correct, that this has been an issue year after year after year, that it hasn't been documented exactly what's going on.
So are you going to fix it so you guys can get licensed?
There's really not necessarily anything to fix. You first have to evaluate what it is. And if you could explain what it is, then there may not be actually an issue with the safety of the dam. It's not seepage coming through the dam. Everybody knows that. It's not seepage coming through the dam. So that's very clear. How it gets there, this is what this report's going to document.
It's a miracle. Water just pouring out of nowhere, right?
Yeah. When it rains, it hits the dam.
So look for the report, Cassandra.
All right. Thank you.
Can we clarify on the question before that John was answering though on the approved plan for Oroville? It's on the web, so I think we probably can give you a link so that you can see the plan and where we're tracking on it, and that way you guys have visibility of what it is. If you want to go look at what the plan says it's going to be September 1st. You can see it because it's a graph, and you can see how we've been tracking between now and then. So I think what we'll do is we'll make sure we provide her that link and maybe even send it out so you guys have access to that. So you can be looking at that as often as you need, and you could see where we're tracking. Obviously, it goes up and down, but we've been within the band and tracking to where we should be.
Okay. So David Lewis, do you need your card or do you have your...
No, I don't.
Okay, and after David, Robert Miller. Okay.
Thank you. I'm a citizen. I don't have an axe to grind here. I think you're doing a great job, DWR. I'm looking at the webcams, you know, and I'm trying to understand the construction and stuff as a citizen. And it's in 2 dimensions and not 3. So my thing is, I see where you have the energy dissipators at the end, and they're putting a lot of rebar, and the construction has gotten to the bedrock, but when the spillway failed, the velocity of the water carried a lot of material away, so there's like these two little canyons or something. So when you're going to tie some of this new spillway down to the bedrock, but there's areas you're going to fill in with material. Now, how do you stabilize that fill material so that the spillway will stay intact when under the operations that you're going to be doing in the future?
Great, that's a great construction question. So I was actually just out there in that hole a couple hours ago. And so what happens is coming through this rock of this spillway, they call what's called shear zones. And what this is weaker rock. And so when that water came over the spillway, it found that weaker rock and it cut those areas out. And that's those big holes that you're referring to. Right. And so now what you got to do is you got to go clean out those holes, get all the loose material out of there. And so I was just there a few hours ago. They did that. They've cleaned out those holes. And now you got to backfill that. And what you do is you backfill it with concrete. And so that's what they're doing. So it'll be, all those holes will be filled up with concrete. And that's what they're doing in the hole areas. When you're talking about downstream, now that's the structural concrete on top of the rock that's already in pretty good shape.
Right. So that's a lot of concrete.
That's a lot of concrete.
Yeah, okay.
That's tens and tens of feet.
All right, thank you.
That's a lot of concrete.
That.
Yeah, sure.
So I have 4 cards left. There are 3 questions from Facebook. So should I read these? Is that what I should do? All right, so the one question is from Amanda Sharp. Why is the city of Gridley left out of these round of meetings?
Right, that's where I'm from.
Well.
So this is the second set of public meetings. We're going to have a third set, and we are going to be doing them in other parts of the region. So Gridley is certainly on the list for a public meeting coming soon.
And the second question from Amanda is about the salmon run. Water in the river at Gridley is barely moving, and it's warm, 68 degrees. When is the river going to clean up the river downstream? The river can't be used for fishing right now.
So I think that's very similar to the questions that we've answered previously, that we are analyzing the impacts of the high water events as well as the spillway event, trying to do some surveying of the riverbanks and rivers downstream, as well as working with Fish and Wildlife to see the impacts on fish, and obviously taking water temperatures into consideration when we work on releases.
Okay. Well, I haven't called your name, so, or did I call your name?
I think you did. I was next.
I'm sorry, were you on deck, Robert? Oh, you know what, you are so right. So I got that one in there, Robert, and then I will finish my Facebook questions. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Robert Miller from Gridley, and we were part also of the evacuation also, because we didn't want to get a big tidal wave down to our town, or Biggs or Live Oak, or our neighboring cities. And how many, I was going to ask you, how many people in the DWR are seeking early retirement, like Royal? Because he retired, I know he was there and all of a sudden he was gone. And so we just like to know, I hope we'll see you guys, not in 6 months, we'll see a whole bunch of new people in 6 months. And also, is DWR helping the Oroville businesses? Because I know a lot of people in the Oroville area, and I know some people there were some businesses that were really hit when the evacuation. They were really suffering. And I can tell that DWR has not done anything to help them. And also make sure that we have and plus I'm very active in local media, because I'm the weather watcher for Gridley. I know that they make sure that, our local media is notified. We don't hear something from Sacramento about what's going on up here. And so just wanted to know about that too. Thank you.
Okay, so early retirements from DWR. Aaron, are you going to answer that question? Or is it...
I'm not retiring.
Okay, but I think seriously, I think his question's about continuity, and then also is DWR helping around economic loss for Oroville businesses?
Yeah, as far as the economic loss, I think that goes back to a previous response that this is not necessarily a DWR issue. I think we want to hear your issues and try to work with you on them, but in the end of the day, it's the Department of General Services that those claims are heard at. As far as retirements go, I don't think in Bill's opinion he would consider it an early retirement. He was planning on retiring back in November and December when he was asked to take the helm as the interim acting director of the department. He took that on, and I think the secretary, Laird, and he loves telling the story, told Bill, don't worry, it'll be fine, nothing that crazy will happen. And then, of course, February happened. So fortunately, we had Bill at the helm at that time because he was an emergency expert. He had the experience to get us through that. But he was always planning on retiring. When he took the job, he said, this is a 6-month gig. I will step in and I will fill this role as an interim. I can't speak on behalf of anyone's life plans. Certainly people have put their retirement plans on hold, like Bill has, to work on this project to get through it. We've had people who retired and came back to help and assist with this project. So I think that while I can't say that everyone at this table will be at this table a year from now or 2 years from now, I think you will see many of the same people working on this project. There are thousands, hundreds and thousands of people working on this in the department.
I'm sorry, Robert.
There was one instance where even our sheriff here wasn't notified, but one time they had a news conference, and our local channels, our local Chico channels weren't notified, but the Sacramento stations were here, but we were not notified about a news conference they had up here in Oroville, so the Chico channels had no idea what was going on.
I think that must have been after my time, so apologies for that, but we are certainly making sure that we have all news media on all of our alerts and press conferences. Absolutely, and I was just saying that we need to bring these two up for a site visit for, I was emailing and setting that up. So we definitely want to get some of even your bloggers certainly up on the site to be able to cover the issue. So thank you for that.
All right, Christina Scholl had a question for Eric.
Okay, the question is, she wants to know about the lamprey eels at the Feather River Fish Hatchery. So this is the third inquiry I've had today about the lampreys at the Feather River Fish Hatchery. So I think I need to do some reading. I really don't know. This year they had a bunch of lampreys that made it up the fish ladder at the hatchery. It's an unusual event. It used to happen a lot when the hatchery was first built, but for many, many years they hadn't seen any down there. So anyways, I need to do some reading and find out. So.
All right, stay tuned. All right, so a third Facebook question. This is Carrie Murphy. Irwin is concerned that the roads across the dam will not reopen after the construction. What are the plans to let the public access the spillway area launch ramp?
That is still, I don't know if anyone else wants to jump on this, but that's still being determined. That route is certainly going to be closed for construction, as is that parking lot and boat launch ramp area. I think we are also working very closely with the sheriff's office to set up new safety precautions, and that might include restricting access to that area going forward, but that's still up in the air for now.
Okay, so I have my last card. This is from Chris Connell, and I was asked to read it. In the contract workers sign, they state that they can't answer any community questions. I think this is consistent with another question. Also, there has been no talk of reimbursement for people who were evacuated.
Yeah, I hope I answered those questions previously. Again, claims are not with the department. And the other question was about access to employees. So that's common practice for Kiewit, our main contractor on this work.
All right, thanks, Aaron. So are there any more speaker cards? I don't have any more up here. I hope I didn't miss anyone who turned one in. No? Okay, well then, Joel, would you like to wrap up the meeting?
For everybody that's still here, well, thank you for taking the time and staying through the whole community meeting. I know it's always important for us because, one, we get to answer questions, but two, if there are things that we haven't thought about or new ideas, then we get to hear that. I know the downstream effects on the river, it's a big one. And while, you know, the department supports any efforts to try to, you know, make the environment better, we're brainstorming on what we can do. You know, there are a lot of organizations that we have to partner with, and that's what we try to do. And, you know, we're not going to give up on that, but right now, unfortunately, we don't have the answers for all of that, but it doesn't mean we're not talking internally on what we can do. And some of it is just resources and hitting the priorities, kind of like the spillway, as Dave Gutierrez said earlier. Even that, the way it's broken out for construction, it's in a prioritized manner, meaning the top is the most important part. So our concentration is that top portion of the spillway has to be done. So that's, and as if you work your way down the spillway, that's how the construction is prioritized. Now, we're confident we can get the work done that we showed for 2017, but it's kind of from the top bottom. The river is the same thing. You know, we're working our way through flood. As Greg said earlier, they're doing the analysis now on what the sediment loading is, what it looks like. And then first is the critical sites for flood protection for next year. So they're working on that, because that is also, like the spillway, has to happen. And identify those areas, have even material ready in certain areas in case we need it next year, but it's all that preparation. So just, I know we're saying have patience with us, but we are working at that. We're taking your ideas. We are trying to brainstorm. We're trying to work with our sister agencies and do our best we can. And so thank you for coming, and we'll keep doing this, and hopefully over time you will trust us. Now it's going to take a while because we have to earn it, but that's what we're trying to do. So good night and thank you.